What is up, wrestling fans? For the first time ever, FanlightZone.com, Fanlight Zone YouTube, we are live with the only wrestling show that calls it right down the middle. That's right. We are live. 607 TWS, the wrestling show, is coming straight at you on the Fanlight Zone YouTube channel and Twitch channel currently. I don't think we're up on the X, but this is supposed to be YouTube anyways and podcast form, of course. Getting right to it, I am your host. I'm also the executive producer of FanlightZone.com. My name is Rich. Joining me in the co-pilot's chair, as she does each and every week, she is the hunter of the Pokemans because she's got to catch them all. She is the guru of cosplay, but most importantly for this show, she is a pro grappling connoisseur. She is the first lady of Fanlight Zone Wrestling. It is Miss Sammy. How are you, Sammy?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well this week. I'm excited. We have some big things coming up in wrestling this week. We have a lot to talk about. I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely. We do have a loaded Impact show. And of course, we want to skip past most of the pleasantries right quick. But first and foremost, we do implore you to go on over to fanlightzone.com. That QR code will take you over to the website. There you can find a bunch of comic book reviews and comic book news, as well as some streaming movies and pro wrestling. There is some pro wrestling articles up, and we have some more on the way. So make sure you go over to the place that runs the show, if you will, fanlightzone.com. And then, more importantly than that, make sure after you go to fanlightzone.com, you find all of our great social media platforms, whether it be X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We got them all. And of course, you're already here on the Fanlight Zone YouTube channel if you're watching us. So make sure you smash that subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications, and hit the thumbs up to let the bosses here know that you want more pro wrestling and other content at Fanlight Zone's YouTube channel. It's been a rough one, so I'm going to try to make it through the TV. If you hear me grimace or you hear some of the things, I've had a little bit of a backache, so this chair is not the most comfortable to be in, but we're going to fight through the pain for all of you. So without further ado, let's get the party started. Let's get the party on the road. And we're going to kick off by giving our recap of something that went down this past weekend. NXT Deadline this past Saturday night, coming to you from San Antonio, Texas, at the Boeing Center at Techport. And oh boy, was it an interesting card. Sammy, I'm going to do we're just going to do the rundown, and then we're going to give our overall for it. So we're not going to break in between, but here's going to get the results. I'm going to go through, starting with the opening contest of the evening. That's right. This was the opening contest for the NXT Championship. Firstly, firstly, I got to go through this. The winner of this match not only became the NXT champion, but also would get a shot at Cody Rhodes at Saturday night's main event. So there was a lot on the line for this match, and it was the opening contest. Your champion, the absolute one, Ricky Saints, taking on former NXT World Champion Obafemi. This match got 17 minutes and 17 seconds, and at the end of the day, your winner and the new NXT champion Obafemi, he will also get a shot at Cody Rhodes at Saturday night's main event as well. That's crazy to hear. Then we got, next up was the first of the two Iron Survivor Challenge matches. Of course, this one is for the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge match. So it was the winner will get a shot at NXT's Women's Championship at New Year's Evil. Of course, both of these matches got 25 minutes because there's a 25-minute time limit. At the end of the day, Kendall Gray would win with three decisions over Sol Ruka, Lola Vice, Kalani Jordan, and Jordan Grace, who all had two, so it's super tight. But Kendall Gray is moving on to New Year's Evil to get a shot at the championship. Then we would have an NXT North American Championship match. Your champion, All Ego, Ethan Page, would be taking on one of our favorites, Mr. Iguana. This match got 8 minutes and 33 seconds. And at the end of the day, your winner and still NXT North American Champion, All Ego, Ethan Page. Then we had a bit of a grudge match as Izzy Dame would defeat Tatum Paxley in 12 minutes and 36 seconds, of course, with the help of the Culling. So Izzy Dame has defeated Tatum Paxley. And in the main event of the evening, it was the Men's Iron Survivor Challenge. And the winner, of course, is going to get a shot at the NXT Championship. currently held by Obafemi at New Year's Evil, and winning that match with 2 decisions, Javon Evans, as he etched out Leon Slater, Joe Hendry, Dion Lennox, and Miles Bourne. All of them only had 1 decision. Both of these came down to the wire to punch his ticket to New Year's Evil and a shot at the NXT Championship. So, with that being said, Sammy, there's some big things. And I think the first big thing on there, opening contest, NXT title on the line, Ricky Saints no more. The Absolute Era kind of came to a quick close as Obafemi, the most dominant performer in NXT, I would say almost NXT history. You'd have to put him up there. Probably, what is it? Would it be between him and Big E, right? As far as the most dominant?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Oh, Gunther. Gunther was pretty dominant.
Gunther as well.
Walter.
I think Gunther more, Walter more dominated the NXT UK. True. he did have a short stint in overall NXT, but if you think about it, his bulk of his work was done in the UK. But yes, you throwing him in there as well. I was kind of surprised by that. What's your takes on the new champion, Obafemi? Of course, also huge deal, gets a shot at Cody Rhodes at Saturday's main event.
I actually like the booking decision. I'm glad the belt is back on Obafemi. Not to say that Ricky Saints isn't worthy of being champion. I'm sure he'll get the belt back in 2026 at some point. But yeah, I don't think it's a short-sighted decision, to flip it just to get Obafemi Cody Rhodes, but we're getting Obafemi Cody Rhodes. So that's going to be really, really awesome. And I'm excited for that. But yeah, I think Saints is got a good trajectory for him and will make a huge impact in 2026.
Absolutely. I think that's, honestly, I take nothing away from Ricky Saints here. It was a good way. We've seen he kind of turned heel on the episode of NXT. I always said that Ricky Saints is a better heel. I'm not saying he can't be a face, but I've always said that he's a better heel. Agreed. And I think that this is going to be a good move overall. Get the belt back on Obafemi because you know what? The belt on him, giving him an opportunity against Cody Rhodes, which we'll talk about a little more in a minute, is a good way to move him up. And let's be honest, the Obafemi is a guy that you're going to definitely want to move up to the main roster as quick as possible. Let's talk about the Iron Challenge matches. I always like the Iron Challenge matches, which is really weird because in their own, the Iron Survivor Challenge matches are kind of a more of a gimmicky thing, but I think that they work well. They're a solid 25 minutes. There's a 25-minute period time limit. It is most decisions gets the win. And we've seen in the past, as we saw here, there's exciting ways to end these matches. I mean, what was it? Just like a year or two ago, where with the Trick Williams having one of the most exciting comebacks and getting 3 pinfalls within 3 minutes or something to win the match. And once again, here, once super tight, super good, well put together. I think that this is one of the most slept upon gimmick matches in all of wrestling. But what are your thoughts on the fact that we got Kendall Gray as your women's Iron Survivor winner, and of course Javon Evans? I almost messed up and said Leon Slater as your men's winner.
I'm very excited about both winners. It's 2 talent on the rise, had really strong years and are finishing the year very strong and are primed for good 2026s. But like you said, with this style of match, it really works well in NXT because NXT is it really feels like that's where you go for it for your in-ring style. You have a lot of people that are young, hungry, and are willing to take those, interesting routes in matches where it ends up playing in that excitement level and the excitement levels of the things that they do in the match. It really works well there. I don't think it would translate well to the main roster, and that's okay. It doesn't need to. It works great down there, and you do different gimmick things on the main roster. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. And last kind of lump them in. I mean, a lot of fun with Ethan Page versus Mr. Iguana. So there's not much to talk about there. Just a lot of fun. Listen, wrestling has to be fun sometimes, folks. And then, of course, the last thing I want to touch on, Izzy Dame and Tatum Paxley. I thought they put on a hell of a show.
Agreed.
I mean, they're very talented, both of them. And I feel like when we were talking about the women's division, and I know we're going to be talking about NXT at the end of the show, that's what the big editorial piece is. But whenever we talk about the women in NXT, you don't have those issues. And I think that, the more that they take up and everybody's like, well, how are they going to deal without Roxanne Perez? And then when Julia and Stephanie Bakir also went up at the same time, wow, they're really pillaging. But hey, everybody on the roster down there just steps up and fills a spot. And I think Izzy Dame and Tatum Paxley showed that they can fill a spot for sure.
No, 100%. If you look at this entire card overall, It has a great balance of everything you want in professional wrestling. You have a bit of a gimmicky match. You have some really crazy, incredible wrestling, and then you have amazing storytelling and a little bit of a crowd or a fan swerve with the big bell changing hands. Like it's kind of got everything you're looking for in wrestling.
Absolutely. And NXT, once again, putting on another solid show, in my opinion. They where we complain about the other shows, whether it be WWE or AEW. AEW because it runs too long, not because of the in-ring stuff. We always like the in-ring stuff over there. WWE where it's not too long, but it's all dragged out and the pacing sucks because commercial breaks. I wish I still had the graphic in here, but I didn't want to show it again. But yeah, I thought that they did a great job over at NXT once again because they've been doing such a good job. Now let's switch gears. Still talking about WWE, but we kind of teased it already because NXT has a big deal to do with this, and it's going to be something I want to highlight. But here it is, it's upon us this Saturday from Washington D.C., 8 p.m. Eastern time on the Peacock, the Peacock. John Cena's retirement match. The last time is now. It will be the final match of the legendary career, the Never Seen 17, the GOAT, whatever you want to call him. John Cena is going to hang them up. And of course, to no surprise of any of us, the ring general Gunther is getting the shot. He won the tournament. We'll start with that just because I thought that this is interesting. But your thoughts, Gunther versus Cena, Cena's final match this Saturday.
Yeah, and the reports are apparently it might go on first, which is rather interesting. That could be a lot of fun. Um, you know, we talked about this at length. Myself, you, Ken M, and some of the others in the group chat, and we talked about this a little bit last week. When you look at the main roster of talent at WWE right now, there's some other people that would be a lot of fun, but in terms of their position in the company, where they are in their career, and WWE's reluctance on really trying to push someone so incredibly young, Gunther makes the most sense. And if Gunther takes a loss, it still works out well. We saw the character work he was able to do earlier this year when he was coming off of losses, and it was a lot of fun. It was really good storytelling. So either route you go, it can really work. Ultimately, I think Gunther does win, and I think he's going to win by submission. But I even saw some people saying that if he wins by submission, don't let Cena tap. Let him do the Stone Cold, pass out, and that's still a lot of fun too. Just never give up. Just keep going until your body gives up on you, which would be kind of fitting for the champ. The champ is here. The champ is here. Overall, it makes sense. It's going to be exciting. Great opponent. He can do a lot of the things that Cena can still do. Cena's gone out there. He's put on some amazing matches, but some of them this year have not been amazing. He's not a young guy anymore. Gunther's the correct opponent to fill that void as well.
I agree across the board. Once again, first and foremost, I think it's the smartest play because, like I've mentioned before, like you just mentioned, Gunther could lose this match and it's fine.
Yeah.
Any other person, you'd have to be like, okay, Cena's definitely either doing the job to bring up a young kid, or he's going to bury somebody on his way out the door. And I don't think it's being a burial, but if you have a young kid that loses to John Cena, that might not hurt your career, but it also might not help it. So you have to really kind of like treat that. Whereas Gunther, he can win the match or he can lose the match. It doesn't really matter. So it's not tipping your hand too well. Also, keeping hope alive, because I said it's the smallest, a small percentage. This could be the bait and switch, and it's not just Edge, because that's what the internet still wants to run with. You remember Chris Jericho somewhere out in the aether. We're anticipating him at the Royal Rumble. Who knows? Who knows if he even comes back, right? But once again, there's some names out there that could end up being tied to this match. So it's about, in my opinion, it's still like a 1% chance. You know what I mean? Just 1%.
Yeah, but you never know.
I don't think it's going to be a big chance, but still, it's but with Gunther in the spot, it makes it possible, because then you don't feel like you're robbing Gunther if you do something really wacky and screwy, right? So I think there's it. But I think the bigger thing on this event and this card, and this speaks volumes for John Cena, because we know it was John Cena's idea, because John Cena was told, this is your final night. You can do whatever you want. We've heard him in an interview confirm it. And we've heard Triple H in the past said, hey, when we planned this last year out, we said, hey, within reason, tell us who you want to face, tell us how it wants to run. And that's what we're going to do. We're celebrating you for a year. So you get to be the quarterback. And of course, Cena famously told him then, which he's saying now, I'm going to do business, whatever business that is. But he did ask for one thing, and that is that on his final night, his retirement night, where they said at one point, Judge, the talk was, we're just going to do a tribute show to John Cena and with one match. That was, and I would have been fine with that. I think a lot of us would have been fine. Show some of his highlights from his career, show some classic matches, and then have his retirement match. I think that he deserves that. I think that that would be fine. But John Cena shot that down and said, no, I want to feature NXT talent on my final night. I want to feature some of this young talent from NXT against guys on the main roster on the final night so we can showcase this young talent. So WWE has acquiesced. We do have a bit of a lineup. We have 4 matches announced. We are going to get, as we already mentioned, the undisputed WWE champion, the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, versus the new NXT champion, Oba Femi. We're going to get Bayley versus Sol Ruca. That's amazing in its own. We're going to get a tag team match. I don't think the titles are on the line, but AJ Styles and Dragon Lee, your tag team champions, are going to take on Javon Evans and Leon Slater. And then you have Cena Gunther. That's what's announced so far. So when you talk about an undercard where you're going to Sol Ruca, one of the most exciting young women on the roster, you're Javon Evans and Leon Slater. Leon Slater's a TNA guy, firstly, but still, him and Javon Evans are tremendous young. I mean, Swerve Strickland most recently said that he thinks that, the best young talent out there is Javon Evans. That speaks volumes. And then lastly, we get Oba Femi, who is a guy we know is going to make an impact on the main roster, or we assume is going to make an impact on the main roster one day. And yeah, he's going to get his shot. He's going to be in there with the champ. The quarterback, QB1, as we like to talk about, Cody Rhodes. So on paper, John Cena getting his wish. I think that this is huge. I think this was a really good call. I think if you're going to flex your muscle at all, you want to put over some talent. Sammy, what are your thoughts on WWE sticking to the gimmick and letting John Cena go out with putting some young talent on a main card, a big deal card?
Yeah, and this means a lot to John Cena. It means a lot to wrestling in general, and it makes a lot of sense for WWE to do this. In their history with having NXT. Whenever they do these kind of things, where NXT members will call out the main roster, we've seen NXT invasion of the main roster and stuff like that. It always works well anyway. It always pops a rating and stuff like that. So put that aside, though. There have been a lot of criticism of main roster matches and main roster talent and a bit of laziness at times and such. NXT ain't going to do that. These guys are going to be on Saturday night's main event. They're going to be on major network TV. They're going to be going up against, major veterans. They're going to go all out. They're going to push these veterans to go all out. And I'm not saying that these veterans can't. We're talking about AJ Styles. We're talking about Cody Rhodes. We're talking about Bayley. These guys can go, but they're going to have to go. And I'm excited for that. We're going to see some phenomenal wrestling on Saturday night. This is shaping up to potentially be the best card of the year for WWE. And I really hope it delivers, because on paper, it should. It should in spades.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. But I think Destination TV is going to be on the Peacock this week on Saturday night's main event, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know I'm going to be watching it, down there at the original home of 607 TWS, the ODPH Dungeon. So I'll be down there with the dog and Ken M, and I know you'll also be watching it. And listen, I don't know if I'd open the show with Cena. I understand that that's talk, and I understand John Cena would like that, but I think closing the show is the better way to go, because I really don't. Quite honestly, I just don't want to see Cody Rhodes in the main event. And it's nothing against Cody Rhodes. It's a night for John Cena. That means let's not have Cody Rhodes in the main event.
No, yeah, it's one of those weird things, because we just did Goldberg's retirement on a main event, and then it got cut off because of timing and everything. So, being live TV, I don't know how much time they're really going to get. Are they going to be held to their time block, or is NBC
it's not
Peacock? They're going to right? Is NBC Peacock going to let them run them?
It's not on NBC, so they can go over. It's only on Peacock. Just want to throw that out there.
So then that helps, in terms of the timing, because even now we've seen it with the PLEs. They hold to a tight timeline. Will they allow? Will they go into the TK overrun? We'll see. Because if you don't, then it does make a lot of sense to run John Cena out there first, give him all the time in the world, and let the other matches be short.
True. But I mean, I'm looking at, if we're going to do homage to Cena, like one of the things that I'm looking for possibly happening, not saying it has to, but can you imagine after the match, win, lose, or draw, you have Roman come out and acknowledge Cena. Just come out, put the ones up for, point out to Cena, put the ones up, whole crowd puts the ones up. It would be like one of those fitting sendaways. And you usually have a send away like that from the new top guy. And I understand Cody's a top guy too, but he's not a bigger act than Roman Reigns.
Yeah, and there's reports that there's going to be a lot of people in attendance. There's reports Seth Rollins is going to be there. CM Punk will probably be there. So doing it first from that aspect makes sense. So you can have all these guys and do those interactions, whether they're in the ring or backstage or something, however they want to do it. It makes sense. Maybe we'll see what
Yeah, but
happens.
I
It's
think
going to be exciting TV.
I don't know. I'm kind of old school in the way that always works better when it's after. Like it's the last thing. Because could you imagine WrestleMania 40 if Cody and Roman went on first? Like that celebration after the event match was way better because it was after the match than it was if it would have happened before. You know what I mean? And then how do you follow it? You know what I mean? And there's a certain amount of people who are probably going to tune out after Cena's matches anyways. Let's be honest. Like I'm not trying to be rude about it, or it's not putting down any of the talent on the show because there's some great talent on the show. I just think that people are tuning in for his final match, and we'll see. We'll see. Overall, we'll see. Well, let's move
Do you think
along.
it just goes full? One last thing. Do you think it just goes full storyline and he just does a storyline thing? He gets stretchered out of the arena or something? I
No,
wouldn't put him past him. Have fun with it.
I mean, I'm sure he'd be game for it, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think you have to get the crowd giving him the standing ovation at the end. You got to give him his flowers. He's earned the
Yeah,
flowers.
he'll be back at WrestleMania to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well, true, but I think that you still give him his flowers. That's a little different. That's not. You only have one last match, and it's so important that Stone Cold came back for a last match. It's like it is. It's so important that somebody like Adam Copeland got well to have a last match. Same with Bryan Danielson. Like not being able to pick your last match and to have a different way to go out. I think that speaks volumes in the business, especially when you're a top guy. All right. Switching gears to something a little more controversial, but we're not going to dive into some of the weeds because some of the weeds have nothing to do with wrestling, but some of it does. And the pondering that we have to do is there's a big tug of war going on. Unless you've been living under a rock, you don't. WBD had come to an original agreement with Netflix. It looked like for the purchase. Paramount Plus then swooped in, went to the shareholders, and tried to do like an aggressive, behind the scenes corporate takeover. So right now we have this tug of war for the ownership of WBD from Netflix and Paramount Plus. I know there's some feelings about what's going on with it. It is what it is. I'm not going to dive into the weeds on it because there's just a lot to unpack there. But we're a wrestling show, and there is an interesting problem here. You see, the AEW logo is above the WB logo. I did that on purpose because AEW is aired on WB. It is part of the Warner Brothers Discovery camp. However, depending upon what happens, no matter what happens here, actually, both of the suitors, both of the companies that may walk away with ownership of WBD, both have business deals with World Wrestling Entertainment and TKO Holdings. So what I mean by that is obviously Monday Night Raw is on Netflix. And obviously, starting in January, TKO's other big property, the UFC, goes to Paramount. Now, where this comes in, where my concern comes in, this is kind of what we touched on last week, but now it's more of reality because literally we mentioned this last week on Thursday when we recorded. The show came out on Friday since we couldn't do it live. And by that Friday, we found out that Netflix was pretty much the winner. And then hold on, kicking out at 2 is Paramount Plus. But here, either way, is kind of a crapshoot. Now, I get it. They have a contract. But whenever there's a buyout, contracts are negotiable. And
Yeah.
and TKO does not seem like the company that wouldn't have some kind of exclusivity deal built into their deals, which means that they may not be able to do business with All Elite Wrestling due to a contract. We don't know. My concern goes back to last week because we are not haters of All Elite Wrestling. We would like All Elite Wrestling to continue on and to thrive as much as it can because it's a better place for A, wrestling fans to have another promotion out there, and B, for wrestlers to get a paycheck. Them losing a TV deal is bad. It's, whereas TNA just gained one, as we talked about last week. So now muddying the waters a little bit is this deal with the whole thing going down with WBD. If you're Tony Khan, Sammy, chat, you can jump in too. If you're Tony Khan, what is your concern level, legitimate concern level, about the future of the TV product?
You have to be nervous no matter what, whether it is Paramount, whether it is Netflix, whether it is somebody else, because one thing that's going to happen here is this is going to, no matter who it is, it's going to take time. This is going to take time. It could take upwards of 2 years for this to be a done deal. How long is AEW's TV deal? It's going to run out not long after that, meaning, maybe they decide right then, like, hey, you have to be canceled because of whoever you're going to. Or maybe it's, guess what? You're not going to be a part of our business portfolio anyway going forward, just by the nature of the contract being close to expiration anyway. What's interesting about this whole situation is that some of the other major players out there, they didn't really have significant interest. They've kind of fallen by the wayside. Apple wasn't heavily interested in this. There wasn't a lot of talk about Amazon heavily, in on this. It was really down to these two behemoths, if you put it. The exclusivity deal, it may not even, like I said, it may not even come into play, depending on how long this actually takes to play out through, the U.S. legal system. And at that point, AEW might already be towards the end of their contract anyway. The potential homes for wrestling are starting to dry up. The two that I mentioned there, and Apple, which just doesn't seem like they want to really do anything besides their own Apple TV Plus, and Amazon. Those would be the only places to really look at this point. I guess maybe a Comcast in some way, or something through Peacock, because obviously their relationship is ending. So I guess that would come back onto the table, maybe. But again, by the amount of time that passes, who knows what the landscape will be like. Tony Khan's got to be a little nervous about it, but he does have the benefit of time. And what he needs to continue to focus on is putting out a really, really strong product. And we've seen that starting to trend that way in 2025, the latter half of the year. And they really need to go out and have a strong 2026, because if you do, then you have more suitors at the table no matter what happens.
I definitely agree with that. Let's be honest. This past week on Dynamite ends with one of the best main events we've seen in a long time on television. Joe versus Eddie Kingston was a phenomenal match. Once again, Bryan Danielson after the show gets up and puts over Eddie Kingston huge, right from the heart. And I think that there's something to that. And once again, 5 matches back from, being off for over 500 days with an injury speaks volumes, as Eddie Kingston went out there and literally had match of the year candidate on television with Samoa Joe. But that has got to continue. And if that is the case, if maybe this is the thing that lights the fire under the ass of Tony Khan and AEW, and they say, hey, listen, we have to now start really firing on all cylinders and really making sure things happen, and maybe bringing things back in the fold. We've talked about it before, getting Swerve Strickland back is amazing because he's the franchise guy. Let's be honest. He is the franchise. Having Hangman Adam Page is old, he's the workhorse, he's out there, he's killing it. The Elite being back together is good for business. You know what I mean? As far as, from it, and you have all this other talent, but there is still some talent that's missing. Obviously, Will Ospreay's out with injury. Eventually he will be back, and that is adding another gigantic piece. And I mentioned it last week. I think it wasn't even on air. I think it was when me and you were talking off air. MJF, he's out making movies. It's time for Tony Khan to be the boss and say, hey, no. We're right now possibly fighting for a spot. We need our top heel or one of our top guys, period, back. We need one of our most, and I think you're going to see that happening. And I think that this week's Dynamite honestly proved that. It was a good card from top to bottom. It paced well. It was, we usually have some complaints about it. And I was like, wow, I was very impressed that this episode of Dynamite went over so well, including having a match of the year candidate on television. And I kudos to that. And, on paper, we had originally gone, really, Samoa Joe versus Eddie Kingston, this early in Eddie Kingston's return, Nope. Completely proven wrong. And I'm fine with that. But I think that, to your point, I think that that's what needs to continue to happen, because you can't think about who the company's going to get sold to. You can't think about where your contract's going to be at, whether it gets, the timer runs out and it runs out and they don't renew it, or if they somehow boot you from it, because like I said, there is ways. You need to just make sure you're as attractive as you can be. And it is kind of troubling that Apple and Amazon did not get involved in the purchase of WBD. But once again, WBD is a company that has a lot of debt. A lot of debt. Remember when Discovery bought WB, sorry. Then when they bought WB and made it WBD, I know it's kind of wild. When they bought them, though, there was a ton of debt for Warner Brothers, and Discovery was in debt.
I think they were worse at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. And the company, when I came out, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if Ken N's in the chat, but I do believe at the time it was like $56 billion in debt WBD was as a company out the gate. $56 billion. And they never made that money back. Never. No. And now you have in this interesting situation here. You have the two parties fighting over it. The only thing I'll say is this: Netflix is actually in debt, trying to buy a company for billions of dollars while in debt. So it's almost like history repeating itself. And Paramount Plus, I'm not going to dive into the financials, but at least they're not in debt. Paramount's not in debt at all. They have some heavy hitter investors, as we know. So it kind of is like, I would have liked to see one of the bigger non-partisans like Amazon or Apple get their hands on WB so they could actually make a difference. Because I feel like it would be a difference. But yeah, I don't know. I think that this is going to be a rough one. It's going to be a rough one overall. But I think that this is where you have to think about yourself. Like you said, Sammy, don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about the contracts. Just worry about going out there every week and putting on the best Dynamite, the best Collision, and the best pay-per-views possible. So it makes you look so much more attractive to everybody else. And if they want to keep you around or somehow can keep you around, it's good for business.
Yeah, because there was even reports early on when the Netflix deal was first, being reported that it didn't include, TNT, TBS, that part of the company was going to have to be spun off. That very well could come back into play at some point when this starts going through, the government. They say, okay, you can buy this stuff, but you can't buy that stuff. You can't own that, and that has to become a separate entity or something. So there's a lot of scenarios, and I agree. For the amount of IP that under the Warner Brothers and the HBO umbrella, don't forget about that. We're talking about Netflix and Paramount and such, like their TV properties. HBO is still, king daddy of that, and it's a little surprising, but I'm sure that debt is very scary. And we're talking about a company with not just a large amount of debt. It's a company that's been in debt for a long time. It's been in debt since like WCW was on the air. Like it's been a problem forever. Oh boy, can anyone balance that book?
Yeah, I don't know. But like I said, we're going to keep our eyes on it. But I'm with you. I don't think this is going to be a sprint. The way these things work is going to be a marathon. Remember when Disney purchased Fox, it took a long time because the FCC has to approve it. They have to go over everything. They have to go, okay, we are allowing this. We're not allowing that. It has to be voted on. There has to be regulations. You have to make sure that it's not a monopoly. There's a lot of things that go into play when these large purchases. And there was a lot of, if you remember, and I know it was a while ago when Disney acquired Fox, once it went to that governmental phase of it, there was a lot of concessions and a lot of things that had to happen before they would let the deal go through. So even if this hostile type takeover that we saw Paramount try to make, which once again, when you have the investors that they have and you have money and not in debt, you can go right to the shareholders and say, hey, we'll give you cash for your shares. That is a thing. Whereas Netflix is trying to sell you a bill of goods. Yeah, they're offering more money, but more money you might never get. Trust me, those people never got their money. The people who were invested with WB never got their money from Discovery because it never made any money.
Never made any money. Lost them more money.
So they lost more money, right? So like you could be in that same boat again for Netflix, because they don't exactly, they're not liquid enough to just come and buy cash. And so that's an issue. So either way it goes, though, like I said, it's going to be interesting. And I have hopes, especially we said about how AEW and Tony Khan need to finish strong in the end of the year to go strong into 2026. And thus far, since the last pay-per-view to now, I know it's only been a couple weeks, they've been making a strong argument. And this is the kind of things that it's not just, oh, it accidentally happened. It's been at least now a month of solid television product and solid pay-per-view. We have another pay-per-view looming, and then we have into the new year. I think that it's a pretty good likelihood, in my opinion, that they're going to make a huge push, and that's good. That's good for pro wrestling. It's good for pro wrestling fans. Even if you don't like AEW, it's good for you, because when there's competition in the air, everybody has to rise to the occasion, if you will. Speaking about high tides raise all ships, when things are going well, the indies are doing well, and we got to hit up the Indy Round-Up real quick. And once again, it is a big GCW week, because we're going to go over some of the shows that went down this past weekend real quick, as well as preview the upcoming Nick Gage Invitational number 10. But let me go do a rundown real quick. It was a big weekend over on Triller TV Plus. If you're over there, trust me, it's a worthwhile thing, especially if you're looking for some wrestling. From Seattle, Washington on Friday, they had GCW Say You Will. We had a hell of a card here where Priscilla Kelly, formerly Gigi Dolan, would defeat the former GCW World Champion Effie. Jack Evans would defeat Jack Cartwheel. Drew Parker would defeat Vipress. Marcus Mathers, would defeat Evan Rivers. Sue Young would defeat Rob. Well, we'll say it, Rob Shit. It was fun to see him on the show. And then we had a 3-way title match for the GCW World Tag Team Champions. Your champions, Busta and the Brain, Alec Price and Jordan Oliver, taking on C4, Cody Chung and Guillermo Rojas. And then the Bollywood boys, Gurv and Harv Shira. Of course, Buster and the Brain would still be your tag team champions. Joey Janela would defeat Shotzi Blackheart. And Atticus Kogar would successfully defend the GCW World title against the GCW Ultraviolent champion and deathmatch legend, the Bulldozer Matt Tremont. Moving right along, the next night we had GCW Highest in the Room. This was from Los Angeles, California at the Ukrainian Cultural Center. The opening contest, GCW tag titles on the line. Buster and the Brain defending against Krusty Crew, Dom Kubrick and Lucas Riley. Of course, Buster and the Brain still your GCW World Tag Team Champions. Joey Janela would defeat Jack Evans. In a tag team match, the Brothers of Funstruction, Rufo and Yabo the Clown, would defeat Epic and Rob Shit. GCW Ultraviolent title will be on the line. Your champion, Matt Tremont, against the legendary luchador Damien 666. Matt Tremont would win that match and stay your Ultraviolent champion. In a 6-man tag team extravaganza, Los Desperados, Gringo Loco, and Jack Cartwheel would team with Vagador, and they would defeat Briante Jr., Ray Horace, and Spiderfly. Then Priscilla Kelly would defeat Vipress in the next match. In a 3-way match, Starboy Charlie would defeat Bobby Flacco and Cobrab. And then in a death match, Drew Parker would defeat Cyclope before the main event of the evening, where Atticus Kogar would successfully defend the GCW World title again against former champion Effie. So just this past weekend, what went down, what's your thoughts about Game Changer Wrestling's big weekend last weekend?
Huge weekend for Game Changer Wrestling. They're doing the double shows, having to travel from, up in that northwest corner and then, down the coastline there. Fun wrestling.
Yeah.
Can we say that GCW is pretty much solid in the top of the indies right now? I don't think anyone's even. Some people are close, but I don't think they're as close as they would like to believe. I think they're pretty solid at the top indie right now.
I would make an argument, not just because I'm a fan, that GCW has been the top independent wrestling company for the past few years. I mean, there is some closer ones. Wrestling Revolver's up there. They're putting on great shows.
Yeah.
But nobody does that. But the thing is, nobody does the travel schedule of Game Changer Wrestling. Like, they've been to all 50 after this upcoming year. They've been to all 50 states. They've been to Japan. They've been to Europe. Like, for an indie company to go and do this, like we were just talking about, Seattle for night 1, night 2, you're in Los Angeles, California. Mind you, this is a company out of New Jersey originally. Yeah, and now this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, the production quality has really gone up over the past few years too. So I think it's pretty solid, and it shows in the product. They put on fun matches, they put on entertaining matches. They really go up and down the spectrum of wrestling. It's not just all hardcore wrestling. A lot of it is at times, but it's not all that. You get a little bit of everything. It definitely leans more hardcore, but what? It's fun.
They do lend into the ultra violent. And speaking of Ultraviolet, and speaking of the new place, they are going to be in Orlando, Florida this upcoming Saturday at the Central Florida Fairgrounds for the deathmatch tournament known as the Nick Gage Invitational, the NGI, and this is the 10th iteration of the NGI. They do have the first round matches listed. So in the first round, we'll get Bear Bronson versus Slade. We will then get Mr. Danger versus Little Sicko. We will get The Bev versus Otis Kogar. And last but not least, we'll get Jack Haroop versus Drew Parker. Some pretty big names in the deathmatch world there. I understand deathmatch wrestling is not for everyone, but it doesn't have to be for everyone. Of course, Otis Kogar famously made it to the finals of last year's NGI, losing to the eventual winner, the Bulldozer, Matt Tremont. So yeah, it's an interesting card. It's an interesting setup. So if you are into deathmatch wrestling, or if you want to give it a shot, because it's not for everybody, but it might be for you. Go ahead and check out Triller TV this weekend, Triller TV Plus, and the Nick Gage Invitational is on Saturday afternoon, actually late afternoon. All right, that leaves us with the main event segment. Coming into the main event, we're coming in hot, and this is something that has been on your mind for a little bit, Sammy. And I'm going to put the logo up here because I came up with a cutesy name for it. And this is NXT The Lost Years. Now, you see the 2.0 logo because it kind of represented what we're talking about, but there's a little bit of black and gold overlap into what you're going to talk about. Explain to the fine folks what I mean by NXT The Lost Years.
Yeah, so Rich and I, we do a little bit of talking, via during the week and afterwards, and Ken M will dive into the conversation as well. And we use the word here, the phrase creatively bankrupt. That's how WWE, and this isn't just a WWE problem, it's been a wrestling problem in 2025. So we've really been trying to understand why and how we got here, and what steps can these companies do to move on to that. So this is kind of really a bigger discussion, but for now we're going to focus on one piece of the puzzle, which is NXT and what happened with NXT, why, and the lost years. And the easy answer would just be to say, well, those are the COVID years, and you could say that, and that's fair. But it's really not, because we saw some phenomenal wrestling during the COVID years. We saw the rise of AEW. We saw, NXT Black and Gold. We saw, the Undisputed Era and their reign of terror during this time. So what really happened? What happened to all those guys? So I wanted to just dive into it. So on October 2nd, 2019, AEW Dynamite debuted on TNT. There was no competition at that point. TNA had been floundering for 15 years at this point, and WWE was just the face that ran the place. They were the only ones around. AEW had Dynamite, so WWE pivoted and they put NXT right up against it, and we had the debut of the Wednesday Night Wars. So let's talk about, we focused a lot about on the AEW side because it was a company on the rise who had some amazing talent. So what was really going on in NXT, which we were also watching because we're, crazies and watch a ton of wrestling. So when AEW first debuted in October, friend of the show, Adam Cole, was the NXT champion. He had won the belt in June of that year, and he held the title all the way to July 1st, 2020. He lost that belt to Keith Lee. Keith Lee had that belt for about a month and a half, where he lost it to my daddy, Karrion Kross. In September, a new champion was crowned in Finn Balor. Karrion Kross had, I believe it was an injury issue at that time. Anyway, so Finn Balor went down and won the belt. He carried the belt all the way to April 2021 when Karrion Kross regained the title. Samoa Joe won the title in August of 2021. He had to vacate. I think it was a COVID thing. Plus, he was concerned about the direction of NXT. And then on September 14th, a new champion was crowned in Tommaso Ciampa, and that was literally the beginning of the NXT 2.0 brand off and running. So we had seen, and during that time of AEW Dynamite starting, we saw Adam Cole, Keith Lee, Karrion Kross, Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, Tommaso Ciampa. Those were the champions during that time. So what's common about most of those guys? Most of them don't work there anymore. They're not with the company at all. They're all gone for various reasons. And then not just those are just the champions. There's some other names that are no longer with the company either. You had the Velveteen Dream. We all remember him. He was supposed to be the next big thing in wrestling. That didn't really work out at all. Roderick Strong was down there hanging out with everyone else. Swerve Strickland was also there. So what happened?
To be
You know what I mean?
fair,
Like,
to be fair, Velveteen Dream had nothing to do with anything but himself.
very
We're not going to
true.
dive in. We're not going to dive into Velveteen Dream.
No, very true. But the point is that if you look at it from WWE's perspective, these are the guys that we're betting on to be the next bastion of great talent on the WWE main roster, working with the guys that were there. So if you go looking at that main roster, you have people like Seth Rollins, you have Roman Reigns, you have Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Shinsuke Nakamura. Some of those guys were all NXT alumni that have been on that main roster for a long time. So what happens with the stability? Because again, there's great stability on the main roster with a lot of top talent. I know we talk about the layoffs every year and people are like, oh, but there's been some people that have some really good tenure there. But what happens? You end up working with everyone and then you kind of run out of things to do. You keep running into the same feuds. You just see a lot of overlap, and that kind of leads to the staleness and the creatively bankruptness. Whereas these guys during this era, they should be starting to mix into that top end of the card, but it didn't happen. It just didn't happen.
Well,
Now it's not to say that it was all bad. You got Damian Priest, you got Bronson Reed. One of the biggest success stories of the 2.0 era, Braun Breaker, is a huge example of it. But what's odd is none of this relates to the women. The women just keep seeming to flowing up and down, up and down and back and forth between NXT and the main roster, and it works out really well. But it looks like WWE really bet on this crop of talent, and none of it really panned out.
Well, I mean, there's a couple reasons why. It depends on who we're going with. So like IE, for instance, you have, some people sought greener pastures.
Yes.
I.e. Adam Cole went to AEW. Where, let's be honest, he did very well when not injured. I mean, not to his own fault for the one, but I mean, you got to remember he was one of the hottest storylines in the history of AEW before that ankle injury, which was really kind of it was just a freak thing that happened out of nowhere, which really kind of sucked because, like I said, it was the hottest storyline possibly in the history of AEW between him and MJF. And then we had to rewrite that, bad boy later on, which didn't work out so well. And now,
Right.
Obviously to no fault of his own, he got taken out again, unfortunately, in the careers in question. So you can't blame him there. He did go on to have some success, and I think would have been bigger success if we would have gotten the real storyline with him and MJF. We just never got it because of the injury.
Right.
Keith Lee would leave and also go to AEW and then go MIA. There's many different descriptions of why. You can believe who you want. I don't like to really dive into the weeds, but some people put it on Keith, some people put it on booking. I'm sure that it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Because if it's in both companies, I think it's got to be a little bit of both columns, quite frankly. Not throwing dirt, not throwing shade, because I think Keith Lee is a wonderful human being. And I think Keith Lee's a hell of a wrestler. It didn't work out. Karrion Kross, of course, is the big puzzling one because recently he got over and then he got, I should say got released. His contract ran out. They did offer him another contract, gave him 24 hours to sign it, and he decided to say no because they gave him no direction. They gave him a lot of money, so it wasn't the money that was the issue, but he wanted to be on TV every week. And, they weren't willing to give him that for whatever reason, right?
Right.
Which is kind of, in our opinion, is kind of dumb. That is, in my opinion, that is 110% all on the booking. It can't be on the wrestler in that case. Because he gave them gold. He handed them stuff that the crowd wanted to see. He got over, but they didn't get him over. And I think that's the problem. I think as much as that was a problem when VKM was in charge, I think Triple H also doesn't like it when the talent gets themselves over.
Yeah, I agree. I think that still persists, that little just thorn issue. And I think you even see a little bit of that with LA Knight at times as well. But I think he's just so over at this point now that it's like, no, okay, we need to do something with this.
Yeah. So you have Swerve Strickland, who went over to AEW and became a megastar. We make, the joke all the time. I love Swerve Strickland. He's an awesome guy. When I spent time in the Indies, I got the pleasure of seeing him as a young man. And now where he is now, oh man, like there's
He
nobody in
is the
my
man.
opinion that deserves. There's nobody in my opinion deserves it more. I'm going to be quite honest and frank, just my personal feelings. But personal feelings set aside, there was the rumor that they told him to put on 20 pounds of muscle in WWE and he'd be a top guy. He goes to AEW, he puts on 20 pounds of muscle because look at him now, and he's the top guy. I'm not saying that they told him to do that. I'm just saying that, hey, he looks like the top guy, he talks like the top guy, and he wrestles like the top guy. He is the top guy. Okay.
Yeah.
He's the franchise player. Would he be the franchise in WWE? I don't think so, unfortunately. I think it was a better move for him to go there. Could he come back to WWE and be the top guy? Probably, because now he's made his worth elsewhere. But, I think a lot of the stuff when we go in, and we're going to talk about some other names, but a lot of the stuff going in and not blaming me coming from the business background of wrestling. That's what I did in the indies. I wasn't an in-ring performer. I was office guy. Did those wonderful jobs of booking and agenting and all the other happy stuff that goes along with it. So here's what I'm going to say, because some people don't say, and mind you, I'm a lifelong wrestling fan, so I understand the fan point of view. But from a business standpoint, when you bring guys up and you're like, hey, we've had these same guys on top and it feels stale, you also have to look at the business aspect of it. And wrestling is a business. It's called the wrestling business, guys. And I know we all forget it. And I know as fans, we shouldn't care about the numbers. That's why we don't harp on attendance and all that. But I will say this for business. When you have a Seth Rollins and a Roman Reigns and, now a Cody Rhodes and a CM Punk, it's hard to dethrone those guys because they make the company so much money. Like, you're printing money with these guys. Like, I love LA Knight, and don't think the WWE doesn't know what they have with LA Knight. Proof of which was this past week on Raw. They built a whole Raw around LA Knight. Think about it. He was in the opening segment. He was featured throughout the show, and then he closed the show with the Vision, right? So they understand what they have with LA Knight. That just proves they do. But it's hard to make LA Knight champion because you're going to have him dethrone CM Punk? CM Punk's a money guy. Makes you a lot of money. Puts a lot of asses in seats. Going to have him dethrone QB1, Cody Rhodes? It puts a lot of asses in seats. I'm not saying he shouldn't be in the main event picture because he should. And I'm not saying he shouldn't be champion because he should. But you have to look at these from a business side of point too. Not to mention that he's a face. And right now, both your top champions are faces. You need to get a heel champion in there. And maybe that was the plan when Seth Rollins was champion. But Seth got injured. It happens. They had to pivot. They pivoted to Punk because if you're going to take the belt off of Seth, you got to replace that. Honestly, in a situation where this happens, you have to replace it with value. We used to talk about it all the time because an indie card subject to change really happens in the indies because sometimes the talent can't get in. Sometimes there's things that are beyond your control. So card is always subject to change. But the rule was always, if we have to change the card, we need to figure out a way to give equal or greater value. And usually edge toward greater. You know what I mean? Because you want to make it up because there might be somebody coming in to that show for the first time because somebody was advertised on the card, a big name. And if that big name can't make it, not because of the big name or because of the company, because it just happens. Sometimes there's a freak. I booked wrestling in New York. Right now it is winter. Winter in New York, you cannot guarantee a flight's coming in or going out. It's legit. The Northeast, anywhere where it snows. Of course, there's the rainy and hurricane season. There's all sorts of places. Guys and gals, I should say, are flying in from everywhere. So sometimes you have to replace talent without notice, but you always want to replace with value because you don't want the fan to think that they're cheated out of it. And so I understand why Punk became champion because that was a way to replace a popular champion with greater value. Where you go from here, I don't know. Right? Could you have Braun Breaker dethrone him in January? Absolutely. And then we're off to the races because then you can set up maybe an LA name. Maybe that's what they're doing. Like, I'm trying to give hope, right? So maybe that's what they're doing here. Of course, remember, VKM believes so much in LA Knight that he made him a manager named Max Dupree. And then he became LA Knight again. So I just think that that's what I want to get into about some of them too. We've seen a bigger disconnect in the men's roster because a lot of them were forced to do different stupid gimmicks when the other people were in charge. Like Keith Lee coming up and doing the bear gimmick. Or famously Karrion Kross being a gladiator and getting rid of his entrance, which was the big, get over in NXT. We've seen this time and time again. I mean, Pac Pac being made into like a superhero. Remember that? Like there was a lot of like this dumb decisions that were made by former management when guys came up. Whereas the girls, think about it, all the girls kept their gimmicks. There's not a woman that came up even during that era that didn't keep their gimmick. Sasha, when the women's revolution happened, Sasha Banks, Bayley, Charlotte, Becky all came up with their gimmicks, and then their gimmicks got better even. I'm looking at Becky Lynch in particular with the man, with the man gimmick, and Bayley going from the super fan to the crazy person. Now we have different, the faces of Bayley, which is fine, right? But it's what happened. And Sasha Banks, of course, being the boss, and now being, all the belts Monet. It is just what it is. But even think about it, all the talent that came up. Name a talent a women's talent that they changed the gimmick. There wasn't a one of them. I mean, I guess you could say Piper Niven when they made her Dewdrop, which was stupid. But once again, I think that was the only one. And she still got it over. Somehow she got over Dewdrop. Like, that's a testament. But every single one of the men that came up, maybe not every single one, but most of them got a different change. Remember when they turned the War Raiders into the Viking Raiders?
Yep. Yeah, every single it's true. Every single one of them got messed with, and it just ended up with this just gap in talent because previously the NXT became a huge feeder system to the main roster, and we already named some of those names: Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Shinsuke Nakamura. Those were some huge NXT success stories that are huge main roster success stories. So, and we're seeing it again with a Braun Breaker, and I know we're going to see it at some point with an Ethan Page or Ricky Saints, Obafemi. I don't see that level of talent failing, but when you had multiple years in a row and you had multiple people that you had at the top of your developmental card not work out for any number of reasons, it's really hindered the state of wrestling in WWE. There are plenty of other reasons, and you started to touch on them, and we're going to keep talking about this and hopefully the conversation, our hope is the conversation goes away naturally because 2026 just ends up being a better year. But you never know. We never know. 2025 we thought was going to be a great year with the way 2024 set it up, and here we are. And creative bankruptcy has been the topic for most of the year.
I agree, and like I said, I think that there is a certain amount of creative bankruptcy, bad booking that did play a part in some of those talents not succeeding on the main roster. But then, like I said, sometimes there's a mix. Sometimes it was the talent. I'm not going to dive into it, but we mentioned Velveteen Dream completely on the talent, right? When you do what he was allegedly, you allegedly do what he allegedly did, you got to say the legalese, right? You have to distance yourself. There's no, we can give you another shot, brother. It doesn't happen that way. So therefore, that was direct on him. And I think that there was some other talents where it was probably 50-50, like probably, part the talent, part management. And then you have like the freak accidents. You just have the things that just happen. Like some guy, we've seen people on trajectory that just, they couldn't get over. They were over at NXT and they couldn't go over. Perfect example of this. And this is a guy that was over everywhere, was Bobby Roode. Mm-hmm. Bobby Roode is a tremendous wrestler. He's a tremendous gimmick. And he's a tremendous producer. We know that now because he's one of their bigger producers. And he produces a lot of great matches, right? But for whatever reason, that same gimmick that was over like gangbusters in NXT, they did bring him up with that gimmick and crickets. And I'm going to say this, there's some of this is on the fans because I think that's a fan problem because we've said it before. The WWE Universe, Mark, and I mean that with all the love in my heart, that is just the people who only watch WWE, and if it ain't WWE, we don't love it. They are the ones who NXT is too un-WWE for them. So they don't pay attention to it. So when guys come up or gals come up, they don't know who they are. I think the girls get over a little more because of a couple different other reasons. Obviously talent is the top one. I'm not saying that it's not, but let's be honest. We've talked about it before. A lot of pervs that are wrestling fans. Mm-hmm. We know a couple of them personally. We're just going to throw that out there. You know what I mean? There's certain things that give me the flag about where you stand as a wrestling fan. I'm just going to throw it out there. But I digress. So I think that there's an issue there too. I think that because of things failing, that management thought, okay, we have to change things up. I'm not excusing management completely because you booked the show at the end of the day, and you should figure this shit out. Quite frankly, if the talent's giving you 100%, you need to give 100% to the talent to put them over. Now, if the talent's not giving you 100%, it doesn't matter what you do with that talent; they're going to fail. So that's when it's on the talent. So there's different things that go on behind the scenes. And like I said, and then there's the freak accidents. Because quite frankly, I think Adam Cole would have been on the same level as Swerve Strickland, talking about AEW going to the greener pastures and actually getting over a lot more. But unfortunately for him, not to his own fault in any way, shape, or form, he is now possibly done forever. And that sucks. But I think that if those things happened, those things didn't happen, I should say, we'd be talking about him like we talk about Swerve Strickland as a franchise player, multiple time world champion, et cetera, because I think the trajectory was there. Or, he would have done all those things in AEW and possibly gone back to WWE because he was one of Triple H's favorites.
Yes.
He left literally. The running joke was him and Aleister Black had left, and they were both Triple H guys, and Triple H assumed power like 3 months after they left. Like it was wild.
Yeah, and we all know it was well documented who was the first one to find a way to get back in and in Andrade.
Oh boy.
Oh
come
boy,
on, Manny.
Wrestling's fun. Wrestling's got some great stories, everyone. So to just circle it all back, we hope that creative bankruptcy doesn't continue into 2026. But if it does, we're going to continue to talk about this because there's some other things that we can discuss. We could talk about booking. We can talk about the lack of heels in wrestling. We could talk about the lack of comedy in WWE right now. There's a bit of a lacking of that in some areas. We can keep going.
We could. I don't like the word could. We will talk about this.
We will.
Well, we will talk about this.
We will, as long as, I hate to say it, as long as wrestling stays creatively bankrupt, we're going to have to talk about this. But if the product gets good, then we might be consumed too much by talking about other things, and we don't want to talk about the past. We want to talk about the strength of wrestling once again. That's what we want to get back to doing. But if we can't get there, then we're going to talk about why it's not. We want to inform our audience.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things that we can talk about, and we can even talk about things historically, which we will do as well. But I just think that right now it's a weird time. I think that we're getting a strong end of 2025 from AEW so far. They haven't let me down. We'll find out. They still have to carry out the rest of this month. WWE is kind of coasting at this point in juncture because it's that time of year for them to coast, albeit huge Saturday, which we will be talking about next week on the show. So next week, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here, Thursday night. We will be talking about Saturday night's main event for sure, because how do you not talk about John Cena's last match and everything going around that as well. We'll also be talking the Indy Round-Up, of course, as I mentioned last week, and I'll mention again here. If you are an independent wrestler, or you own an independent wrestling company, or you work for independent wrestling companies, or even fans, throw us some, in the comments. Drop in the comments some of the indie companies I should check out, where I can check them out. If you are a promoter and or a wrestler, hit us up. Hit us up in the comments, or go over to fanlightsZone.com, and I'll put the little link on the screen up there. But go over to fanlightsZone.com and hit the contact us page. Contact us. We're always into doing interviews and talking to people and showcasing it. That is what literally the Indie Roundup is going to be. It's not going to just all be Game Changer Wrestling all the time. It just so happens that Game Changer Wrestling does have a bigger following and seems to have more shows. So that's why they get put. But you're going to see things from other companies as well, trust me. And if you have companies, because I understand not all of the independent companies are on IWTV or on Triller Plus, or some of them have YouTube wrestling shows and some of them don't. So it is what it is, but there's always a way to talk about it and get people in the door. So we always want to, help out, because I do love independent wrestling. I came from independent wrestling. And of course, anybody else, all of you watching or listening, if you're listening to a podcast form, go over to fanlightzone.com, check out the articles, join the revolution, throw the contact us up there. There's a lot of free stuff we're giving away. I just want to throw it out. As of right now, this upcoming week, we're giving away, I don't have it with me, it's at the other studio, a copy of G.I. Joe Volume 1. So it's issues 1 through 6 of the new Energon Universe G.I. Joe. We're giving away a copy, a trade paperback of that. And all you have to do to enter is follow us. I'm gonna put these up right now, actually. Follow us on social medias. And also make sure you smash the subscribe button, hit the bell icon for notifications, and hit that like on YouTube. So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, that's one entry. If you follow us on any of the social media platforms you're on, that's one entry. If you follow us on all of them, it's multiple entries. So you could have like 6 or 7 entries, 8 entries, whatever it is, right? And just doing that, we're going to give it away on Tuesday. So when we record the show, you'll hear who gets the book. So we're giving away the first book, and then there's other giveaways going on. Of course, we're comic books and pop culture, so that's why we're giving away comic books. But trust me, there's going to be some wrestling giveaways coming up as well, because I have some stuff on the back burner to support some friends, and also some things that are wrestling and comics. Just throwing it out there. So with that being said, though, you can find us every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here, Nerd Initiative YouTube channel and Twitch. We will be live on each every week. And of course, if you're watching us on replay, thank you so much. Jump in the comments. Always join the chat if you can. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of 607 TWS, The Wrestling Show. So for myself, for Miss Sammy, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next week, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and most importantly, later, wrestling fans.